Hello and welcome to this ECS Publishing Group video chat. I am Mark Lawson, president of the ECS Publishing Group, the umbrella company for E.C. Schirmer, Morningstar Music Publishers, and Galaxy Music Corporation. These chats are designed to help give you a chance to meet some of our composers and hear from them directly about their music. We're doing this interview while many in our musical community are dealing with the disruption of COVID-19. Our thoughts are certainly with everyone as we are all dealing with this crisis. Today, I'm joined with one of our newer composers, Kyle Pederson. Kyle has several new pieces in both the Galaxy catalog and the Morningstar catalog. So welcome, Kyle. Glad you've joined us.
Good morning.
So why don't we start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I went to Augustana College, which is now Augustana University, also in Sioux Falls. And I was involved in the choirs, the piano program, a lot of musical activities there at the college. But I was not a music major. I actually majored in government, philosophy, and political science, and religion. And I ended up moving to the Twin Cities area, Minneapolis-St. Paul, after graduating, and became a teacher, 7th grade geography teacher primarily. And about 7 or 8 years into that, a wonderful friend and colleague and I had the chance to start a business, Learner's Edge. And so we created a business. It's an education business, teaching teachers and students in a different capacity. Loved growing that business, did that for about 10 years or so. All the while teaching and running the business, I played piano quite a bit, worked at my church ministry a lot, and recorded a couple of piano CDs, but hadn't created any choral music at that point. And then maybe 6 years ago or so, 2014 or so, I tried to write a choral piece, and it was a bit of a mess. It was not a super success, but I loved everything about the process. I loved creating the music, trying out different melodies and harmonies, different piano accompaniments. I loved bringing it to life, getting the feedback from the choir, hearing even the things that didn't work, going back and revising it, trying it again. Loved it so much that I decided that this is really what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so I sold my half of the company, went back to grad school at a charming college out in Montpelier, Vermont, called Vermont College of Fine Arts, got a degree in music composition, and for the last 2 years or so have been still continuing my role in the music ministry at the church, but then also freelance composing.
That's great. That's great. So I was going to ask you kind of when you got the bug for composition, but I think you kind of answered that. Let me ask you about that, though. In your composition, you started out doing more things for church, but now you've kind of branched out into also doing quite a few things for school. Do you see that kind of an equal in your compositional output, or do you feel one way or the other is a little bit stronger for you?
Well, that's a great question, and kind of a tricky question, because I love writing across so many styles and genres. A lot of my most recent work have been spirituals and sort of gospel blues, but I also have a lot of iconic sort of reimaginings of iconic hymn melodies. But I also like writing in folk, in pop, a little bit of country, jazz, traditional choral. So it's really tough to sort of classify. But one of the things that I'm committed to is sort of a little bit of the blurring of the line between secular and sacred. And so I would love for my pieces to be able to resonate in both avenues, so that both musically and textually, choirs and audiences and congregations can find handles and entry points into the music.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think the first piece that we've published that came to our attention was your setting of A Mighty Fortress. And
yes.
The thing that struck me was the fact of how you used an electric guitar with that, and in a way that to me sounded like a harp. How did you kind of come up with that whole concept?
Well, that's interesting. I've actually had a couple of people who have reached out and asked if I had the harp part to Mighty Fortress. I didn't realize it at the time that it would sound sort of harpish, but looking back in retrospect, it's like, oh yeah, I can see a little harp influence there. I have always wanted to think about sort of pushing a little bit of the boundaries of choral music, and not in terms of dissonance and atonality. I'm extremely, diatonic, with heavy pop influences. But I love the idea of bringing something new or fresh to the field, especially when I'm looking at reimagining or re-envisioning already existing melodies. And so I wanted to do something with the Mighty Fortress, a hymn that had always resonated with me. One of the favorites in the literature. I wanted to do something that would make it live and breathe in a different way. And I had been noodling around with one of my grad school connections, and he had brought an electric guitar with him to a residency. And I just thought that would be a really interesting sound. And we have some outstanding guitar players at my church. And I thought, we use guitar in the praise band, we use guitar in other sorts of settings, but not traditionally with a choir. And so I thought, let's just see what that sounded like with a little piano noodling, with sort of an ambient guitar, with a little bit of reverb, maybe even a little bit of distortion. And when we put it together, it's like, that's got some possibility.
Yeah, it works very well. So I know that lately that you have been doing a lot of collaborations with the Wartburg Choir and Lee Nelson. And so talk about that relationship and how that maybe has even changed you in some ways.
Well, Lee is just extraordinary. I'm just so impressed by the sound and the culture he's built with the Wartburg Choir and the impact he has on the thousands of students he works with when he clinics and guest conducts across the country. It's just really inspiring stuff. So Lee somehow got a hold of that at the time, an unpublished version of Mighty Fortress. I hadn't published it because I wasn't really sure what to do or who might perform it or where it might live. He got a hold of it and premiered it, brought it to life, took it on tour, eventually published it with you in his series, and it's gotten lots of good traction since. So I reached out to Lee a few months after that. This would have been last summer. And I said, Lee, I have some other ideas for reimaginings of some hymns, just in case you'd like to do a commissioning. And he invited me down to the campus, or I actually probably invited myself down to campus, if I'm being more truthful. And I brought a few different ideas that I thought might resonate with him. And what I thought might be a 45 to 50-minute meeting turned into this entire afternoon of collaboration, exploration, conversation about a bunch of different possibilities. And so based on that conversation, we structured a way of bringing me down as composer in residence for this current school year and into next school year as well, where I've had a chance to work with all the choirs down there, as well as the composition students have just loved it.
Well, I know he's excited about that as well, because I know I was getting email from him saying, hey, I just got this great piece from Kyle Pederson. And then the next day I'd get another one that says, hey, I think I just got a better piece than the one I sent you. So I know he was excited about that too.
It's really fun when you're in a setting where you're working with just such talented students, passionate students who are fully invested in what they're doing. And with Lee and all of his talents, it's just inspiring all the way around. And so just lots of music, lots of things would bubble up. And so I was able to sort of juggle a few different projects and bring them all to the choir at essentially the same time. And I think perhaps the most exciting project that we did, and there's been several, but we had a chance to bring a new arrangement of Soon We Will Be Done.
Talk about that, because that was where I was going to go next.
Well, this again is an example of an iconic melody that already existed, and I had sung Soon I Will Be Done at church as a congregant. I had sung it in a couple different choirs growing up in high school and college, and had always loved the idea of doing something with it chorally when I became a choral composer. And I also really loved the idea of integrating some spoken word. That's always been a sort of a tool in the toolkit that choral composers haven't utilized much, and I love that idea of integrating the two. And so wanted to conceive of this piece instead of the typical interpretation that we will leave the problems of the world behind when we go to heaven. And that interpretation works for lots of people. I think that's awesome. But I wondered if we flipped it on its head a little bit and thought about those attributes we attribute to heaven, a reign of peace and justice and love and goodwill and compassion. If those were to come to earth, what that would look like. Right. And what we might say we'd be done with. And so we created some spoken word, had a chance to make a music video, with the students about a month ago or so in the Wartburg Chapel, and they just dove right in. And it's just really, really exciting.
Right. I was just going to encourage anyone who's watching this to pull up that video and look at it. We're going to post it on our website. We're just very close to putting this up, and it should be on our website actually when this chat airs. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at it. It's phenomenal. So the choir did such a great job, and I think the staging and the movement of the choir grabs your attention as well, the passion that was there. So another piece that, let me just talk about a moment, it's not necessarily with the Wartburg Choir, I think, but is that setting of Come By Here that is now just being released as well. At first, whenever I saw that, I thought, well, do we really need another setting of Kumbaya, you know? And then as we went through, it was like, oh, I think that this is so different from anything I've seen. And then I heard the same thing from our recording choir and Matt Culleton. They said, oh, another setting. And then when they finished it, it was maybe their favorite thing on the recording session. So
Awesome.
Talk about how you approach that piece.
That piece, like a lot of my pieces, start with just me at the piano, noodling and seeing sort of what my hands find and what my ears like. And I remember the intro riff or piano motive to that. I just kind of let that sit, and I thought I really like the way this is sitting. I wonder what melodies I can hum over the top of this. And I just started humming some different existing melodies, hymn melodies over the top of that, and eventually came to Kumbaya. And I started kind of humming that over the top of the piano riff. And I thought, yes, this is going to be it. And I thought, I love this sort of little simple, sort of elegant, airy, ambient piano motive so much that I thought that would kind of be the foundation, would kind of run throughout the piece, but maybe with some improv in the middle. I've always been taken by Ola Yelo's piano improvisations when he works with choirs, just that combination. And giving the piano player, and I've been a piano player for years, giving the piano player something to sink their teeth into as well. That allows both the piano to build and the choir to build with sort of some vowel sounds and some underneath that. And so I thought I would keep it very simple, build it, and then I wanted to get to a point in the piece where textually I sort of did another little turn on its head. I think the piece is beautiful. Come by here, someone's praying, someone's crying, come by here, an invitation for the Spirit to come there. But I also wanted to kind of proclaim or invite the audience to consider that the Spirit is always here in everything that we're doing. And so the sort of the climatic portion of the piece is this exploration of that the Spirit is here in our grieving, in our loss, in our joy, in our living, in our loving, in our breathing, in our caring. And I wanted that to wash over the listener. I
think that works very, very well, you know, and I think when people listen to it, I was struck by how many things were being sung all at the same time. That gives you that presence of God always present, no matter if we're rejoicing or if we're in sorrow, or if it's in evening or if it's in morning, you know, that we're all in this together. I think, and during this time, it was kind of it's a balm to me to kind of hear those words, actually comforting words.
It has been timely, and of course Matt Culleton's group just brought that to life exquisitely, and so it's easy to fall in love with the piece when it's sung so beautifully. Right,
yeah. Well, one other piece let me touch on before we close, and that is you also, which is a completely different style than these, you've written one called Exsultate Jubilate, which is much more of not based on the piano part as much, I would say, and is not as improvisatory. So it kind of represents a different style for you as well. Tell me when you wrote that and who you were thinking of when you did that piece.
That piece too started as a piano noodle. just sort of the energetic, rhythmic piano intro resonated with me. And I thought, what could I flesh that out with? And at the same time, I was thinking about wanting to do a setting of something that incorporated both Latin and English. I've always loved that juxtaposition of sort of the ancient sort of vibe of the Latin plus English. And I've also really enjoyed toying with sort of bookending pieces with energetic, fast, frenetic, and something in the middle that's much more sort of intimate and contained. And there's a couple pieces sort of like that. So Exsultate Jubilate, and I thought, well, all composers at some point need a version of Exsultate or Jubilate Deo. It just seems like part and parcel of the role. And so I began to just sort of hum and noodle things over that, and wanted to textually again think about, you know, the Latin is translated, you know, we sing to God, we rejoice, we sing praises. I wanted the middle section to think about, well, why are we singing? Why are we rejoicing? Why do we offer up praise? And so the English text that I wrote there sort of explores and invites the listener to consider these things that we can be thankful for, and how we can sing and rejoice. And then it was just fun to bring the various motives together at the end and to layer up. I love accessible vocal lines, but I also love layering accessible vocal lines so that each choir part can sing something fun, and it builds to this cacophonous sort of Exsultate Jubilate big conclusion.
Right. That's great. Well, I probably ought to wrap up this conversation, but I think we could go on for quite a while. But I really want to thank you for taking time to visit and to talk about this. We look forward to seeing compositions from you for years to come. So let me tell those of you watching how to listen. If you would like to listen to Kyle's work or any of our new publications, we've created playlists on our website and on our YouTube channel that allows you to listen and to see all the scores. You can also use the playlist much like you would listen to a CD. You can use it in your car, you can listen to it continuously, or you can break them apart and listen to them individually. So we invite you to explore that new part of our website. You can also always see the pieces individually on our website. Thank you for taking time to join us. Our thoughts are with all of you. Have a good day.